Welcome to Movie Oubliette, the film review podcast for movies that most people have mercifully forgotten.
I'm Dan.
And I'm Conrad, and in each episode, we drag a forsaken film out of the oubliette,
Discuss it and judge it to decide whether it should be set free
or whether it should be thrown back and consigned to oblivion forever. We review the films others tend to forget. Come with us and open up the movie oubliette.
Greetings, listeners. You're listening to Movie Oubliette, the globe-encompassing movie review podcast with me, Dan, not knowing what all the buttons and knobs do on my new synthesizer down here in Melbourne, Australia.
And me, Conrad, baking chocolate bread in Cambridge, UK.
Chocolate bread? What? That sounds great.
I know.
In this podcast, we discuss long-lost fantastical films, horror, sci-fi, and fantasy, because witches, demons, and swinging swords is the sort of thing we get up to after lunch.
Yes.
Hello, Conrad.
Hello, Dan. How are you?
I'm good, and you?
Yes, not too bad. I'm very jealous of your new synthesizer.
Yes. So this was a recent purchase. I've got the ASM Hydrasynth, which was actually suggested and highly recommended by our guests on the podcast, Lematos.
Oh, yes.
So thank you for the recommendation.
Have you mastered it yet, or are you just staring at the knobs scared?
I've turned it on and I've pushed some buttons and I've realized I have no idea how to use it. So
Right.
watching a lot of YouTube videos.
Okay. Well, that's always fun. It's a journey of discovery. I like that.
Yes. Lots of confusion, actually. And lots of questioning my intelligence as well. So,
No.
but I mean, that's what YouTube videos are for. It means someone can tell me how to use it and show me.
Yeah, I'm the same. So my chocolate bread, I saw the recipe. One of our friends, actually, Debbie, posted it on Facebook, and it looked really yummy. So yeah, I was following the recipe to the letter, and I'm just hoping the damn thing rises because I've not done bread with active yeast before, so it should be interesting.
Yeah.
Well, I shall look forward to seeing if mine turns out or whether I've just got this chocolate log that I'm chewing.
Still sounds tasty.
It does.
Any tasty treats in our mailbag, Conrad?
Well, yes, so on A Perfect Murder, Laura said, "Truly have not thought about this movie since 2002 when I watched it repeatedly during my phase of watching the entire filmographies of every Lord of the Rings actor."
Wow, that's commitment. Dedication.
It is, yeah. I can understand you doing it with Viggo Mortensen, though, because it's kind of interesting to trace him back from Lord of the Rings and suddenly discover him in all these movies.
Yeah, his roles are really interesting as well.
Yeah.
He doesn't stick to one sort of typecast.
No.
I really loved him in History of Violence.
Yes.
Yeah. Kind of a
Cronenberg
strange movie. Strange. And also, that's right, Eastern Promises. He's fantastic in that.
Yeah, I always forget that he was in Witness in 1985. So.
The one with Harrison Ford.
Yeah, I know.
I
always
studied
completely
that
forget
in high school, actually.
Really?
Yeah.
Yeah. And the first time I remember recognizing him was Crimson Tide.
Right.
The submarine movie. So yeah, he does pop up here and there in some interesting places. So it's quite fun to go through his back catalogue. Also, one of the social media posts that I did to promote A Perfect Murder, I took a clip of Joe talking about the bathroom scene and how he likes to take a bath, and I superimposed his face over Gwyneth Paltrow. Which he retweeted saying, "This is horrifying. What a couple of bastards." And Corey Hotzenpiller replied, "I'd be mad too. You've got 9.765% more range than Paltrow." Strangely precise.
Yeah, it really is.
And of course, we heard from Serge of Cold Crash Pictures.
Oh,
hello,
hey, Serge.
Who said, A Perfect Murder is one of those films where I can write down more things I didn't like about it than things I did, but I still think it's a fun little thriller that's up to his eyeballs in late 90s genre conventions that makes a good time out of knowing exactly what it is. Movie Oubliette just reviewed this one, and it's another instance of me agreeing with all of their criticisms, but then I'd vote the other way in the final verdict.
Oh, okay.
So despite all of his shortcomings, he's still agreed with it.
Well, Conrad, Serge might be in for a treat then.
Yes. He could well be. So what is it we're doing today, Dan?
Well, I mean, speaking of Serge, this was chosen by Serge himself.
It was.
It's one of our patrons' choice.
Yes, better go and find out what it is.
Ah, yes. Back in a minute. Oh, I'm in some sort of monastery. There's monks. Dead monks, though.
Oh, yeah, they smell a bit too.
And a book. Some pretty good reading. I might read it later. Exorcism Miss. Oh no, wolves.
Quick, come back.
Ah, here's the movie.
Hey, we're gonna need more holy water.
I'm back.
Gets weirder in there every time.
I
So
know.
what do you have for us?
Well, today we are going to be doing 2011's Season of the Witch. It's directed by Dominic Sena of Swordfish Gone in 60 Seconds fame.
Oh my.
And it stars the incomparable Nicolas Cage.
Oh wow.
Ron Perlman, Claire Foy, Robert Sheehan, Stephen Campbell Moore, Stephen Graham, Ulrich Thompson, and the most renowned Christopher Lee.
Wow, that's a lineup. So what are they up to?
Set in 14th century Europe during the Black Plague, Americans Bayman and Felson are two deserting holy knights, disillusioned by the atrocities of the Crusades. A month later, are tasked with escorting a girl, the alleged creator of the plague, to stand trial for witchcraft at Severac, accompanied by a grieving knight, altar boy, street swindler, and priest. They are thwart with your usual perils of adventure, wolves, rickety bridges. But is the girl actually a witch? Maybe she'll sprout wings and bring back a horde of zombie monks. Well, we will find out.
As one does. Yes, can't wait.
Yeah. Okay, Conrad, Season of the Witch.
Indeed.
Not Halloween 3.
No. Sadly.
This is a Sorcerer and Stone fantasy horror almost.
Yeah.
With Nicolas Cage and Ron Perlman. Just being Nicolas Cage and Ron Perlman, like they don't look the part or act the part. It's very strange.
It really is an odd movie. I had not seen this one before.
Right.
And was completely unaware of its existence.
Yes, well, Serge has brought this up from the depths of the oubliette. I had seen this movie
Wow.
before, and I don't really remember it, even though I saw it like not long ago. And watching it again, yeah, not a lot happens in this movie.
No, it's only an hour and a half, and you'd think it was a pretty lavish production. I think it cost 40 million to make, so I guess that's sort of mid-budget, but there's a lot of location shooting in Austria and Hungary and Croatia. They're up in the Alps. Yeah, so you'd think that you'd get more of a sense of having gone on quite a quest and quite a journey, but it sort of flies by and yeah, not much happens. Really.
Yeah, I really appreciated the location filming, like filming on location in these majestic landscapes.
Yeah.
Amazing. But then it'll cut to a battle scene that just looks like the worst green screen ever. And I just don't understand. They should have just cut all that stuff out. The green screen ruins this movie.
It really does. Now, and I think this is to do with the production history of the film. So it spent a long time in development hell. It was based on a spec script by a guy called Bragi Schutt, who is still working. In fact, recently he wrote Escape Room,
Right.
the little horror quickie that came out in 2019.
Ah.
So it was shot in 2009, slated for release in March 2010, but then went through extensive reshoots in September of 2010 that were directed by an uncredited Brett Ratner. Now, if you know Brett Ratner's oeuvre, the Rush Hour movies.
Oh, and the X-Men.
Yeah, The Last Stand. Yeah, so the real cream of the crop. Yeah.
Yes. And he did Red Dragon as well, though.
He did, yes.
I liked it.
I know. I have a guilty secret about that. So that particular book, the Hannibal Lecter story,
Yes.
has been adapted a couple of times. Once by Michael Mann, the great Michael Mann, as Manhunter.
Oh, yes. I've heard about this. I haven't seen it, but yes.
Yeah, we're a highly revered movie. And then there's the trashy version that was done later on with Anthony Hopkins in, because Anthony wasn't in the original Manhunter. I actually prefer that version. I know that you're not supposed to, but I do.
I haven't seen the original, so I haven't got a comparison, but I did like Red Dragon when it came out.
Yeah.
I do have to say that Brett Ratner's films are tarred by all of the sexual allegations against him.
Yes, he's been thoroughly Me Too'd and hasn't made a film since Hercules in 2014. So
Right, yes.
I think his career is probably over. But he did do extensive uncredited reshoots on this movie after the producers watched it. And I don't know, that wasn't sort of actiony enough or exciting enough. So after all of this beautiful location photography in Austria and Hungary and Croatia in the Alps, all of a sudden they're just in front of a green screen in Louisiana hacking swords at each other.
Terrible.
And I did laugh during those crusade scenes because it's quite clearly using the same technology as Lord of the Rings, but I think Lord of the Rings did it a lot better, where you have small group of people in the foreground,
Oh, yes.
and massive army behind them that's clearly fake.
Yeah.
Which made me giggle. And then you cut to the close-ups of them actually fighting, and it's like 12 people.
Yeah.
And then the movie was just sort of dumped on the market in January 2011, where it placed third in the box office behind True Grit and Little Fockers, and then vanished without a trace after generating about 90 million worldwide.
Not great.
No, didn't have a great run in its original release.
Yeah, because all of that reshoot stuff, so all the reshoots were all the green screen?
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
Yeah,
'Cause
exactly.
they ruin the movie for me. If
They really do.
if they'd cut all of those scenes and just referred to these crusades in dialogue, it would have been better. And we could have just not had that
Yeah.
to witness, because they seem like another movie.
Yeah.
They almost seem like TV movie quality compared to the epic scenery of the rest of the film.
Yeah, which feels like a real gritty thing that's taking place in a real place. Yeah, it's kind of like Lord of the Rings versus The Hobbit, I think.
Oh,
So
yeah.
whereas Lord of the Rings looks like an epic journey in a real location, The Hobbit looks like a bunch of people with a fan on them in green screen. It's
Yeah.
just completely
Yeah.
airless and unbelievable.
And there's no blood, and yeah, just the worst. I did find this movie was almost trying to do two things, but not really successfully doing either of them. So movies like this, they're never taken seriously. These kind of action adventure movies set in some medieval time or fantasy land. I'm thinking of movies like Van Helsing or Hansel and Gretel, Witch Hunter, or League of Extraordinary Gentlemen, sort of like
Oh, God.
an older time. But trying to do the action genre, it's kind of a lose situation to start off with, because no one's going to take it seriously unless it's some epic like Lord of the Rings.
Yeah.
But with this movie, if they were going to do that, have some more action, but not like terrible green screen action, but like some decent action, because a lot of the scenes that were actiony, you couldn't see anything.
No.
It was so dark.
Well, yeah, and apart from the cinematography, which, I mean, it's color graded to death, but also the editing. I'm not sure if it's the editing or it's the directing. Maybe the footage wasn't there, or maybe the editing was bad. I know it was re-edited by Brett Ratner's favourite editor, Mark Helfrich. I don't know. I just can't tell what's happening. So, for example,
I couldn't either.
there is a scene where Ron Perlman has a sword fight with Robert Sheehan's character. So the altar boy is trying to prove himself that he belongs on this quest. So the grizzled old crusader fights this young upstart. You have the same sort of Princess Bride thing where he says he's going to fight with his left hand only so that he gives him a bit of a chance and doesn't kill him. So, yeah, all very familiar. But the actual fight itself, I cannot tell what's happening. I can't tell who's got the upper hand. I can't tell who's in danger. There's just lots of quick cuts of people moving around and swords swiping around. And I don't care.
Yeah.
And then it's over.
Yeah. And that's one of the scenes where you can actually see, see things, because it's not nighttime, it's a daytime scene. The night scenes,
Yes.
it's just blur.
Yeah.
Just you have no idea what's going on.
No.
Yeah, I think a lot of the footage was just too close up. So I mean, it's a cheap way of doing an action scene or a fight scene, just lots of close-ups and just quick edits.
Yeah.
Lots of shots of a character swinging a sword and then a close-up of a blade connecting with
Something.
who knows what.
Yeah.
Something, someone, who knows, and then someone falls over. Like even the scene where, spoilers here, where the zombie monks come back to life and they're fighting them. You only know that they've sort of got the upper hand because there's these wispy effects come off when they cut their heads off. And that's the only way you know that they've defeated their foes, because you have no idea what's going on.
No. Another example of that, I think, is the scene where the witch escapes and they have to search this abandoned town for her. It's really dark. There are certain things that are supposed to make you jump, like somebody throws a plague-ridden body onto a cart, but I don't see who it is or which of our characters is nearby and who is threatened by this or anything really. There's just no context. It's just, here's a shot of a dead body being thrown onto a cart, and now we cut to something else. So yeah, it's really poorly edited. There's no tension. I can't see who is where in relation to anything else. I really struggled with it because there are various sequences in it where you thought, well, this is clearly supposed to be very exciting and full of tension, but it just doesn't work because of the way that it's shot, lit, and edited.
Yes. The best action scene is the bridge crossing.
Yes.
Because you can see everything. No one's swinging swords around.
Yeah.
And it's just a situation that they're trying to get out of. Every other action scene, and I have to say, there are only 3 things that happen in this movie before the final conclusion. 3 things. The girl escapes, the bridge crossing, and the wolf attack.
Yes.
That's it.
Yeah.
And in 2 of those things, you cannot see what's going on. And often the end result is a bit like, oh, okay, they're moving on.
Yeah. There are no consequences.
No.
Well, let's talk about the story then. So the idea is that these 2 knights of the crusade who have deserted because they've become so disillusioned with murdering women and children, murdering men, particularly black people, fine. But when they accidentally kill a woman, he's all cut up about that, Nick Cage. So they run away, but then they end up having to take on this mission for the church because when they return home, their land is beset with the Black Plague.
Yes.
It's all because of Claire Foy in a very early appearance. I think this is her film debut, isn't it?
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah, it is.
So future Queen of England is accused of being a witch, and this band of Dungeons and Dragons characters get together to take her from point A to point B to have a fair trial, and if she is the witch, they kill her and the plague stops or whatever. So this is my question. Are you supposed to be frightened of Claire Foy? Is it supposed to be an is she or isn't she kind of situation? Because to me, she starts off being sort of coy and sort of suggesting that the priest character played by Stephen Campbell Moore is interfering with her when nobody else is looking, and she's actually this demure poor girl. But then she kind of drops that halfway through and just keeps sneering and sniggering and toying with people, saying to Nick Cage, "Do you think I'm a witch?" And then the torch goes out and then it comes back on.
Yeah.
She's the most obvious witch ever.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. So throughout the entire movie, you're never siding with her.
No.
And especially when she starts doing things that just make you think she's definitely a witch.
Yeah.
When she starts gesturing when the wolves arrive and then suddenly they turn into these killer demonic animals.
Yep.
So it's like, hang on a second, I think she's a witch.
Yeah, just slightly. Yeah. This is after she's howled to summon the wolves.
Yeah.
She just sort of smirks all the time, like during the bridge crossing where she rescues Robert Sheehan's character, Kai. She rescues him by sort of catching him with 2 fingers about the wrist, as though she's taking his pulse. And then when he looks up at her, she sneers at him, like she's a cat and she's just toying with a mouse before she finally kills him. And you think, shouldn't she be like desperately clutching onto him with both arms and only just managing to pull him up so that she's, 1, believable as a human being, and 2, generating some empathy. And, maybe setting Kai against the others because he has sympathy for her now. No, she's just going to sneer and sort of stare out from her bangs.
I felt like there wasn't enough screen time for Claire Foy as well. Like there were just hardly any lines of dialogue for her and hardly any time for us to even try to believe that she's not a witch. And so when she does turn into like some winged creature from hell, you think, well, I expected that, didn't I?
Yeah. Well, that's the thing. So, I mean, supposedly I'm wrong to worry about all this business about her, not even bothering to pretend that she's not a witch, because it turns out that she isn't a witch. Spoilers, twist, she's actually a demon. And she wanted them to think she was a witch so that they would take her to the abbey so she could destroy the MacGuffin that is the only thing that could destroy the demon. Why the demon didn't just inhabit one of the monks and do it himself or herself, I do not know.
Yeah.
Why it didn't just fly there?
Yeah.
Got wings. I don't get it.
It's another Lord of the Rings question. Just fly there.
Just fly, for goodness sake. It's quicker. Yeah, I don't know. But that's the twist. It was all a clever plan that she wasn't even trying to set people against each other, which would have been really interesting, like a burrowing into people and preying on their weaknesses. But there isn't really much of that because she's just sneering and howling like a wolf.
Or like very obvious sort of things as well. Like when she finds out that the soldier has lost a child, she kind of plays on that. But it's so quick. There's no sort of toying with it. There's no digging at the sort of emotional wound. She manifests as his lost child and then he dies.
Yeah, he runs into Robert Sheehan's sword accidentally.
It's too quick. Like I felt like we were just getting to know these characters and then they just get killed off. Like there's no character depth at all, or no sense of development. I guess they tried with Nicolas Cage's character, with him feeling the guilt of killing a woman, but at the same time they didn't really try. Like I didn't find his character all that different to Ron Perlman's character.
No.
They were just 2 bitter, hardened, deserting soldiers.
Yeah.
You could have got rid of Ron Perlman's character and just had Nick Cage's character and it would have been the same movie.
Pretty much.
Although I did like their quips together. They were kind of funny.
Yeah, they do have bants, don't they? I quite like the banter that they have between them.
Okay, I take it back. It's the only thing that saved the movie, the band.
Yeah, pretty much. Yeah, there are a few funny lines in there, which we'll probably get to in the moves. But there isn't enough of it. Again, there just isn't enough between them.
Yeah.
And there's one moment where they're set against each other because Nick Cage has lost faith in the girl being innocent because she's like howling and drawing wolves and things. And so he resolves to kill her with a crossbow and Ron Perlman stands in his way. But they don't really get anywhere with that either. And then they join together together at the end for the final battle against a green screen and a PlayStation 3 final boss that's not convincing in the slightest. I don't know, there's just not enough of a dynamic even between the members of the group.
Oh, 100%,
I mean, they're sort of mildly interesting characters, but we don't really see them interact or turn against each other. Or, I mean, credit, I suppose, that the Catholic priest doesn't turn out to be evil.
Yeah,
he's not
that's
corrupt
true.
or anything. He's just trying to do his job. I mean, that doesn't give you much to enjoy in terms of drama.
Yeah, and the fact that Kai is the remaining character at the end as well, the only one that survives, as well as Claire Foy's character.
Yeah.
They don't develop his character enough. So he's the end guy, and you think, oh, okay, I guess we're happy now?
Yeah, I guess we like him.
Who is this kid?
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, he is the most sympathetic character you could have seen with a bit more screen time and a bit more development. We might have cared a little bit more, maybe.
I mean, he's a fabulous actor, though. Robert Sheehan.
I know.
He plays Klaus in Umbrella Academy.
Yeah.
He was the Irish guy in Misfits. I don't know whether you've ever seen Misfits.
No, I haven't. I fell in love with him as Klaus in the Umbrella Academy.
Hilarious.
He is so good in that.
He's hilarious. In Misfits as well. He is the best character. And he's only in it for the first 2 seasons and then he leaves. But he's amazing. And he's, completely underused in this movie.
Indeed, yeah. I mean, he looks like a baby, though. This is 10 years ago.
Oh, yeah.
He looks incredibly young and very sweet. And he is the most sympathetic character. I mean, probably the scene that resonates in any way is the scene where he is knighted by Nick Cage. I thought you needed a queen for that, but obviously it's a battlefield commission or something because he just grabs his sword and just does it on the spot. And it's a bit pompous and silly, but he's really sweet in that scene. He looks genuinely awed and touched that he's being recognized by these 2 grizzled veterans of war as a man who can hold his own sword, I suppose.
Yeah.
But you're just not given enough. It's like 90 minutes and it's just like, next thing. And all of them badly edited. So you can't really get your teeth into any of them or care about any of the sequences at all.
Yeah, and there's not even any really atrocious Nick Cage acting to sort of witness either. There's one scene where he almost goes full Nick Cage.
Yes, sort of like a semi-Nick Cage moment. See if we've picked the same one.
Yeah, it's when he's trying to kill the girl.
Yeah.
And he has a bit of a shout.
Yeah, he gets halfway through his line and then starts screaming out of nowhere. A benevolent God would not ask such things of men.
And I was excited. I was like, oh, are we going to get more of this? But no, we don't.
No, straight back in the box.
Now it's time for Random Trivia.
So, Dan, what fascinating tidbit of trivia have you discovered in the pages of The Key of Solomon for us today?
Well, there's not a lot of trivia about this movie. It's not very old. But
No.
I did find out that Claire Foy met Stephen Campbell Moore on this movie.
Oh, yes.
So he's the actor that plays de Balzac, the priest.
Oh, yeah.
And they got married.
Ah. So she wasn't put off by the weird monk's haircut then?
Oh, yeah. Well, there's never a good monk's haircut. They were married 3 years later, but they separated in 2018.
Oh, okay.
But, if anything came out of this movie, it was love.
It was love, yes. I think they had a child as well, so there you go. That's one good thing that came out of this movie.
Yeah.
A young girl called Ivy Rose.
Oh, that's a good name.
It is. And that's our trivia.
I was going to ask, what was the point in the opening scene?
Yeah, I don't really know. I wonder if that was part of the reshoots. It's one of those opening stinger, keep them interested scenes. So it's a bunch of completely unrelated characters, as far as I could tell.
Completely unrelated.
Yeah, 3 witches on a bridge. I mean, in terms of female representation, this film does not do well, let's be honest,
awful.
because there are 4 women in the movie. The lead woman, played by Claire Foy, is credited as the girl, although apparently she does have a name at the end. It's Anna. She becomes the narrator. And the 3 women introduced at the beginning are all on trial for being witches, so to speak. I mean, they just basically hang them off a bridge. But one of them is a classic old crone with milky eye who's just basically should wear a T-shirt that says "I am a witch" on it, and,
Yes.
and she is. Then you've got one that looks like Susan Sarandon. I don't know why she's there, but they pitch her over the edge and she dies anyway. And then you've got a lovely blonde lady who's begging for mercy, saying that she's been falsely accused, but lo and behold, it actually turns out when the priest returns under cover of darkness later that night to complete the ceremony on his own, clearly a bad idea, hauls them out. And the one that was the sweetest was actually the most evil. But yeah, it's got nothing to do with anything else. I don't even know why it's there.
Yeah, because time-wise as well, they have these time titles that pop up, letting us know what year it is. It's 100 years before Nick Cage and Ron Perlman's character even exists.
Right.
So what is the point in the first scene?
I did not realise that. That's a good catch.
I just don't understand. I mean, the only thing I can think of is he has the Book of Solomon or whatever it was.
Ah, the MacGuffin.
And that is the only thing.
Right.
But he doesn't even talk about it. You just see it, and then you don't reference it until the very last scene of this movie. So they could have taken that whole scene out.
Yeah.
One thing I did notice as well in that opening scene, did you see the Hound
The Hound.
from Game of Thrones?
I did not. Is he in there?
Yeah. He's the soldier. So when the priest says, "Oh, we should pull the woman up to give last rites or whatever," he's the soldier that says, "Oh, they're dead, aren't they?"
Yeah, can't be bothered. Dinner's ready.
Yeah, that one line. And I was like, hang on, was that the Hound?
Yeah,
And I thought,
there you go.
is he going to be in this movie? No, that's the only scene he's in.
No, well, I mean, he'd be over 100 if he were, so that would be very strange.
Yeah, that's true. That is true. So I have to mention his name is Rory McCann of Game of Thrones.
Yeah. So yeah, odd little movie. And in terms of how it represents women, I mean, there are no women in our main band of characters. It's all men on this journey. And the one woman is suspected of being evil and the cause of a plague. And at the end of it, we find out, yes, she was.
Yeah.
So women are evil, especially if they're beautiful. That's the message of the movie.
Yeah.
It's nice.
I don't understand why they didn't play up the is she or isn't she plot point. Like they should have. They should have made her really, really innocent. And the fact that in the end she ends up being possessed. Like why didn't they have that sort of turmoil of being possessed and not possessed and being good and then evil? Like that's the whole point of sort of exorcism movies. That dichotomy. Dichotomy? Is that what you would say?
No, that's a great word. Yeah, let's go with that.
Yeah.
Yeah, some inner turmoil, some drama, any drama, conflict of any kind, really, would have been great.
Yeah.
But, and also some ambiguity as well, perhaps, about whether this is something that's really happening or whether it's just something that's happening psychologically. But in this movie's world, everything is quite literal. It's all really happening.
Yeah. Because it was interesting as well, because for the most part, this movie is rooted in reality. You know, there's a plague, there are knights, there's swords, there's a couple of dangerous wolves. But for the most part, reality.
Yeah.
Until the last scene, where I don't get it. It's almost like when you watch From Dusk Till Dawn. You think it's a normal movie and then suddenly vampires.
But at least that was the point of that movie. I don't know what was happening here.
Yeah.
No, I think they had one kind of movie and then the producers watched it and thought, well, this isn't going to get us anywhere. And so all of the other stuff was thrown in at the last minute. Because if we talk about the demon that Claire Foy turns into, it doesn't look great. It's created by the Phil Tippett Studios, so the legendary Industrial Light and Magic stop-motion animator who created Go Motion. So we saw his work in Dragon Slayer, another medieval adventure, working on the dragons. As things moved into digital, he transitioned into that before he retired and created this digital animation studio so he could infuse digital animation with all of his knowledge gleaned from real-world practical animation. But when I read the sort of behind the scenes of this, he was referring to it as something that they came into really late in the game and had to replace somebody else's work. So It feels like something where they had to do it in a rush and they did the best they could in the time that they could. And the end result is not great.
I would have just preferred a standard witch.
Yeah.
Like before she turned into the creature, when she was full witch. That's great. I want more of that.
Yeah, just with the weird face and sneering at people and being superhuman in terms of strength. Yeah, that would have worked.
Do that.
But no.
It's called Season of the Witch.
Yeah.
So make her a witch.
Yeah. Maybe that's why the scene was added at the beginning of the movie, because without that scene there wouldn't have actually been any witches in our Season of the Witch movie.
That's true. Oh, yeah.
Oh, dear. So what about other production aspects? What, for example, did you think about the score by Atli Overson? I'm probably pronouncing that horribly, horribly wrong. He's an Icelandic film score composer. We've bumped into him before. He did the music for The Fourth Kind.
Oh, right.
Yeah.
I did not like the score for that.
No.
This score was fine. There's nothing I could really critique about it. There was nothing outstanding about it. It was just standard fantasy score.
Yeah, I would agree with that. I would criticize it a little bit more because to me it sounded like all the things, like, you know, a kid in a candy store. It felt as though the producers said, I want a choir, I want a moaning woman, I want a huge orchestra, I want drums, I want chanting, I want everything just thrown in there. If there were themes, I didn't hear them. It was just desperate and overblown, just like the editing, just sort of overcompensating for a lack of actual substance.
Yeah.
I feel like that comes from Atli Overson's history with Hans Zimmer's remote control productions. They sort of revolutionized film scoring by creating this sort of machine-processed orchestral sound that became very popular in the aughts. I think remote control is a perfect name for it because it has that sense of it being machine-made, distant, impersonal, just press button, out comes movie music. It's sort of the thing that could be replaced by AI now, probably fairly convincingly.
Sure.
Which is a shame because he is actually a talented composer, and you can hear that in the work that he's done for things like the Defending Jacob series on Apple TV+. He's much more in that sort of Johan Johansson icy cold strings piano, sort of Icelandic.
Yeah, yeah.
He did the Eurovision Song Contest movie as well.
Oh, amazing.
With the amazing songs. So yeah, he is actually a composer who's capable of doing interesting work, but not when he's, I don't know, just being called upon to churn out this kind of trash.
Yeah. I mean, if it's anything like the fact that they reshot on green screen super quick, I can imagine the scoring and the cues for this would have been the same.
Possibly.
We need this yesterday. And so he's just like, okay, cliche fantasy.
Yeah.
Here we come.
Yeah.
Nothing original. Just get it done.
Yeah, and just lots of stuff happening, but nothing you can hold on to, which I think is pretty much the watchword for the whole movie.
Yeah. I want to briefly talk about the accents.
Oh, yes.
So I can dismiss Nick Cage and Ron Perlman. You know, they're the big stars of the show. They don't have to try. But why does Kai have an American accent?
Yes.
Why does the swindler, what's his name, Hagamar, why does he have a Boston accent?
Yes.
He's not even an American actor.
No.
He's British. And Robert Sheehan is Irish.
Yeah, I know.
Why not make the most of the actual accent?
And I love that Robert Sheehan is doing a mid-Atlantic, I'm an American in a historical adventure movie trying to sound vaguely English accent, which is quite an achievement.
Yeah, that's true.
It's very keenly observed and well placed. It sounds terrible, but I have no idea why he's doing it. Well, I do. I tell a lie. I've read that the director told everybody to do an American accent because in a lot of ways, people doing English accents in a medieval drama is just as false as them doing anything else.
True.
But it does sound weird. It's very difficult to believe Nick Cage wandering around saying, I'm a knight. sounding like Nick Cage.
Yeah.
It's just
It's like the criticisms people have made about Bill Burr in The Mandalorian when he's because he's got the strongest, is it Boston accent?
yeah.
And he's in space. Like, I guess it's become just the standard fantasy world, medieval. Everyone sounds English.
It is, yeah, and sometimes they use different accents to give different cultural signifiers. So, for example, in Lord of the Rings, Gandalf sounds very sort of received pronunciation English, very posh, because he's supposed to be a learned old man, whereas the hobbits have got kind of a
West Country accent.
yeah, so that they sound more like, you know, working class men of the land.
Yeah, I remember watching a Bill Bailey stand up because he was thinking of auditioning for Lord of the Rings, but he thought he couldn't pull it off, that sort of accent in fantasy. But then finding out that the hobbits were just West Country, it's like, oh, I should have just auditioned. I have to just sound like I'm a rural guy picking apples or something.
Yeah, exactly. He would have been perfect. Yeah.
Yeah.
Coming to you live from the Movie Oubliette Theatre, it's the prestigious Mobley Awards.
It's the Mobley Awards, where we don't blame witches for the plague, but instead nominate our favourite demonic parts of the film in the number of incantation-ridding categories.
Best quote.
I strongly suspect we will both pick the same quote. So it's one of those quips between Bayman and Felsen, the old grizzled crusaders, and it's while they're on the crusade and there's a guy behind them shouting, "Kill all of the enemies of God." And Felsen says, "Do you ever get the feeling God has too many enemies?"
Yeah. Oh, all their quips were hilarious. My favourite was the first battle scene, actually, with Ron and Nick Cage. And they're sort of betting on how many men they can kill.
Oh, yes.
And then Bayman says to Felsen, "I pity any man whose last face they see is yours, Felsen." And then Felsen pulls the goofiest grin. It's so good. It's so good.
That's Ron Perlman, though. Again, he doesn't have enough time to make an impact in this movie because he's so good and so effortlessly good.
Yeah.
But yeah, not given enough screen time.
Best hair or costume.
I would say Nick Cage's hair.
Oh, yes, me too.
The mane. I don't think I've seen that mane since Con Air.
No.
But it's so majestic.
It is, yes, and it's kind of a late 90s Kurt Cobain mid-neck length. It's sort of grungy, but with a perm. It looks quite high maintenance for being in the field on a crusade, but it seems to stay conditioned and lovely, so well done to Nick Cage, I guess.
Yeah.
Maybe Bayman's born with it.
Maybe.
Most 2010s moment.
I thought this felt more like a noughties film, to be honest. I didn't find anything that was very 2010s about it. I mean, it was shot in 2009 after all.
Okay. Yeah.
Maybe the post-J horror boom in moody girls glowering at men between strands of dark wet hair. That's the only thing I could think of.
Yes. Oh, yes. Yeah. I would point out the CGI. It was just that kind of real crap. 2000s, early 2010s CGI. I hate it when they try to use dust to cover up things. But the dust looks bad. Like the CGI dust doesn't look good. And so it just doesn't work. Don't like it.
Yeah, just digging a hole and it just gets worse, yeah.
Favorite scene.
The only scene where I started to feel as though I cared a bit was the bridge crossing,
Me
which
too.
I think you mentioned.
Me too.
Yeah.
Yep. And you could see what was going on. And there was actual peril. And it wasn't just like rabid wolves. Yeah. That's great.
It was, yeah. I mean, it didn't work perfectly well, I'll be honest, because I didn't really get that sense of, the precipitous height that they were at or anything like this. You only really got that traditional shot of, one of the boards on the bridge falling away sort of 3/4 of the way through the sequence after two people had already fallen over the side and been pulled back up. So I never really got the sense of how much peril they were in. And then as soon as they were across, you didn't get the scene of them sort of gasping with relief as the rope bridge fell away. You just sort of cut to another scene. So that scene's done.
Yeah, I was actually surprised how sturdy that bridge was as well, because it looked like no one should cross that bridge.
Yeah.
And they pull a whole cage across, a whole carriage, just pull it across. Yeah, why not? That's safe.
Indeed, yeah. I know. Those ropes look like if you sneezed, they'd go.
Yeah.
But apparently, you can push a whole horse and carriage over that thing. So that's lucky.
Most cliche fantasy moment.
I will have to say, for cliche, the bridge crossing scene. Because how many bridge crossing scenes are in action, adventure, fantasy movies? Every single one has to have one.
Yep. Even the Bridge of Khazad-dûm in the first Lord of the Rings movie. Yeah, you have to cross a bridge. You have to at some point.
And they're always the least maintained as well.
Yeah, poor bridge maintenance in all fantasy movies. I thought probably the magical MacGuffin of the Key of Solomon, which, it's even better because it's actually a spell book almost.
Yeah.
Yeah. I thought that was probably the biggest cliche, but I did say yes. Honourable mentions: crossing rickety bridge over gaping chasm, and also placing bets on body counts just before a battle. That seemed to be quite popular.
Yes.
Ever since Legolas and Gimli did it in Lord of the Rings.
Yeah.
Best special effect.
My favourite special effect is the wolves, because I love the fact that they morphed from normal scary dogs into slightly scarier dogs, which I found hilarious. I was killing myself laughing. It's like, why bother? It was just slightly scarier.
Yeah. And they have the accompanying sound effect as well, which is just ridiculous. Like, whoa.
How about you?
I put the same thing.
Really?
I mean, out of all the effects, they actually did look cool.
They did.
Like when they went into the full scary. Way better than the end demon. Way better.
Yeah, they did. Yeah, those wolves were pretty good. I mean, even when they were sort of stabbing them and they were sort of falling away limp after they'd been slashed with a sword, I thought, that actually looks like a practical thing, but it wasn't. It's all CGI, so well done.
Yeah.
Favorite sound effect.
You kind of briefly mentioned it. It's during the girl tries to escape scene, and they're sort of wandering around this village, and I guess they're trying to build suspense or horror or something.
Yeah.
And so you've got like loud sounds that aren't actually anything dangerous. So a bunch of dried flowers make the loudest crackling sound you've ever heard. Oh my God. And then it's followed by a dead body just being dropped onto a wheelbarrow. And it sounds like all of the body's bones just shattered. Like, it's ridiculous. How about you, Conrad?
Well, mine wasn't actually a sound specifically. It was a voice, and it was the demon's voice. But it wasn't my favorite sound effect. It's actually my least favorite. I thought the demon's voice was really, really bad.
I did too.
It wasn't scary or deep or resonant or powerful. It just sounded like a PlayStation 3 final boss. And oddly enough, it was voiced by a man named Kevin Killebrew, who was primarily a video game voice artist, most famous for things like World of Warcraft. So there you go. This is his only movie credit. And there you go.
Most funniest moment.
My funniest scene was the wolf attack, oddly enough.
Wow. Okay.
Not just because of the morphing between normal scary dog to slightly scarier dog, but just the sight of people trying to look heroic while they're hacking dogs to shreds. It's just, dog slaughter is not a good look. And I particularly like Nick Cage doing that thing where he slashed one that was in front of him and then killed one that was behind him without even looking, which is really cool when you're fighting a sentient being like a human. But when you're fighting a dog, does it matter that you can't see? I don't know. The whole thing just had me in fits of hysterics throughout the whole thing. I just thought, yes, there's lots of dogs being slaughtered. This is what we wanted.
Yeah, I know. Am I supposed to be rooting for the humans here?
Yes, I know. Very, very poorly judged, but there we go. I thought that was hilarious.
Funny scene for me. I don't know why I found this funny. So Bayman and Falson have entered this village and then they get exposed for being the deserters that they are. And then they're confronted by these guards or soldiers or something. And they have a bit of a clash of swords. One of them starts shooting a crossbow at Nick Cage. And Nick Cage is just swashing them like flies, like with his sword. It's like...
Yeah.
That's not humanly possible. Why is this in this movie?
I know. That was hilarious. I did laugh a lot.
All right. That's our movie award.
Hi, this is Lotta Losten, and you're listening to Movie Oubliette.
Okay, it's time for us to pull out our swords and fight for Season of the Witch. Final verdict time. Should it be released in all its winged demonic glory to be adored by all, or should it be burnt at the stake and plunged into the river with stones in its pockets, sinking to the bottom of the oubliette, forgotten from the annals of 14th century European history? Conrad.
Well, I don't think this will come as a surprise to you, but yes, I did not enjoy this movie. I didn't hate it. It just didn't seem to make much of a lasting impression. And although, like Lady Hawk, I really appreciated the outdoor photography, the location shooting, and it was nice to see Robert Sheehan in an early movie being as adorable as he always is. I didn't really root for anyone, I didn't really care, and I couldn't really tell what was happening in any of the action scenes, and there were only 3 of them anyway, and then the movie ended. And the credits rolled, and I thought, well, that happened. At least it was only an hour and a half.
Yeah.
So I really hope Serge, bless him, who is a huge fan of the show, and we love having him listening along with us, and we love having him as a guest. I really hope this isn't like a huge childhood favourite of his or something, for 2 reasons. 1, if he was a child in 2011, I hate him. And 2, I really don't want to offend him because he's a great guy. But I'm sorry, this just didn't do anything for me. But maybe as a PG-13 introduction to fantasy and horror, this appealed. But it didn't do anything for me.
I mean, this was the second time I've watched this movie. The first time, thought it was okay. Second time, thought it was okay. Like, it's just fine. Like, there's nothing amazing about it. It's not horrible at the same time. I think it would be a better movie without the reshoots and the crappy green screen. I wished they'd kept Claire Foy as a witch at the end instead of this terrible CGI monster. But yeah, the characters didn't care that they died. Just didn't even know who they were.
Half the time, no.
And then you end up with a character you thought was a witch, and then an Ultra Boy that you barely really even saw. So I don't know. And I do feel the director, he's done Gone 60 Seconds and Swordfish, both of those movies, a lot of style, not a lot of substance. And it did kind of come across in this movie as well.
Yeah. And he hasn't directed a movie since. And what does that tell you?
Oh no.
That's 10 years ago and he hasn't had any work. He may have retired quite blissfully, who knows? But
yeah, I am very sorry, Serge, if you think this movie is the best movie you've ever seen. But I wouldn't recommend it to anyone. But if someone put it on, I would say it's okay.
But I don't think that's enough for it to escape the oubliette.
No, never.
So,
put it back down there.
Indeed, yes. I just grab it by the wings. Down you go.
Well, thanks, Serge, for being a patron and letting us rip into your film.
I know. Please stay as a patron. And if you would like to be a patron and recommend a movie for us to pull apart, please head on over to Patreon. For as little as $1, you can nominate films for us to tear apart or love. You never know. We always love discovering new things. That's why we're here. We love discovering undiscovered gems. And for $5, you'll get access to our minisodes, which include reviews of more recent films that we have seen, including our latest episode, which we'll talk about The Vigil, which we're very excited about.
Yes, yes. And if you want to keep up to date with all of our episodes or talk to us, you can follow us on all social media platforms, Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram as Movie Oubliette. Tell us how much you love Season of the Witch.
Yes, classic Nick Cage. Now, there are other Nick Cage movies that we should consider. So we're also on email as movie.oubliette@gmail.com. We love to hear from you.
And please give us a review on Apple Podcasts or whatever other podcast platform you are using.
Yes, it cheers us up no end to know that there are people out there listening.
Yes, yes, sure does. So what are we going to be doing next episode, Conrad?
So next time I thought we would go back to my favourite decade, the 80s, and also returning to science fiction, which we haven't done recently. So in honour of Sean Connery, who passed last year at the ripe old age of 90, we will be looking at the 1981 British science fiction thriller Outland.
Oh.
Another Peter Hyams movie. Yes, a lot of his movies are in the oubliette because although he's a very busy and prolific filmmaker, none of his films seem to have reached sort of super heights of popularity. So
This is the third one we've done, right? So we've done Capricorn 1 and The Relic.
yes, that's right. Yeah, number 3. And we will have a special guest along for the ride with us. So that's very exciting.
Bit of a James Bond fan, maybe?
Yes, he is, but not of Sean Connery, oddly enough. He shares my views on who is the best James Bond.
All right.
So if you want to find out who that is, then you'll have to tune in.
Thanks for listening, everyone.
Yes.
Until next time.
Bye for now.
Goodbye.
We review the films others tend to forget. Come with us and open up the movie oubliette.
No man has spilled more blood in God's name than I. A benevolent God would not ask such things of man.